Okay, welcome back. We are in module 8, lecture 1, and in this lecture we will discuss about the treatment of wastewater produced from tannery and pulp and paper. So here in this lecture we will cover the concepts on the introduction on the tanneries and manufacturing processes, and we'll talk about that how the manufacturing of the leather is done and how the hides which are used for the preparation of the leather, so they are prepared so that they can be amenable to the tanning process. Similarly, the tanning process will be discussed. We will also discuss about the finishing processes which are involved during the manufacturing of the leather, and we will also talk about the flow diagram of the vegetable and chrome tanning process in this lecture. So tannering industries is one of the oldest industries where the animal hides are converted into leather. So we talk here about the hides, not about the skin, because the skin mainly applied for the living animals, whereas hides is applied for the dead animals. So we will be converting here the hides into the leather. So this process is known as the tanning process, and we are converting the hides into product which is very highly resistant to the degradation, because we know that the animal hides, so they may contain lot of hairs on it, they may contain lot of protein material attached to it, they may also contain lot of flesh attached to it, and as well as the blood will be there. So these things we need to be converted into a product which is more stable, which is more resistant to the further degradation, because if we leave these hides as it is, so then they will be degraded because of the bacteria which will thrive on the flesh that is available, on the organic material which is available to them, and on the proteins which is available to them. So they will try to degrade it further. So we try to make the hides completely resistant to the degradation process. So this is known as the tanning process. And we also do this tanning process so that we can make the leather more soft, we can make the leather more uniform, and which can be used for a number of purposes, like it can be used for the clothing, it can be used for the apparels, it can be used for making of the shoes, etc. So that is why the tanning is a very old industry, because from the ancient times it has been used for the clothing of the ancient peoples. So that's why this industry can be classified as one of the oldest industries. The tannery wastewater that is produced because of this process, because of the conversion of the hides into the leather, so this may be characterized by a strong color. So we can have a very high color in it, not only because of the natural things which are present in the hides, but also of the dyeing, or basically we can say the coloring of the hides, because of which the color comes into the wastewater. Similarly, it may contain very high amount of BOD values, because a lot of proteins, lot of flesh, lot of organics, so they are going into the wastewater. And similarly, it may also contain a number of highly dissolved salts, where basically we can have the concentration of the salts, because the salts is used for the preservation of the leather, and during the other processes also we use a number of salts, so that we can make the leather more receptive to the tanning process. So that's why this wastewater may contain very high content of the salts in it. And similarly, the pH will vary depending upon what process we are using. So the wastewater coming out from that process, the pH will depend upon that process and based on the chemicals that we are using for that process. So the pH will depend upon that. And pH varies from, it may be basic when we are using lime salts, whereas it can be highly acidic when we are using acids and other acidic salts. So here the main concern is that we can have a growth of a number of clusters of these industries. So these industries may grow side by side, and they may start dumping their waste outside their premises, which may contain lot of chromium salts, and these chromium salts may again leach into the groundwater, and it may cause damage not only to the groundwater, but it can also cause the damage to the surface water wherever the water leaches, because it contains highly carcinogenic salt, that is basically chromium 3 is used, which may be converted to chromium 6 on the oxidation process, and this may go to the surface water bodies, as well as it may also contaminate the groundwater. A case has also been reported where it was found that a cluster of the industries, the groundwater was totally contaminated by hexavalent chromium, and the concentration was more than 1000 times of the drinking water standards. So that's why it is very, very important that when we are having this wastewater which is being generated from the tanneries, so this basically should be treated properly so that it may not cause irreversible damage to the environment. So that's why it is very, very important that we try to treat this waste up to a certain degree so that we can go for its safe disposal. Similarly, the hexavalent chromium is here a major concern, because all of us know that we have already talked about the metals, and hexavalent chromium is highly carcinogenic in nature. So this may pose a major threat to the environment, because hexavalent chromium, if it goes into the water, or basically into the surface water or into the groundwater, so it may contaminate that water and people may be drinking it without knowing that it is containing hexavalent chromium. So the tanning process involves a number of combinations of mechanical as well as chemical processes. For example, we can have number of chemicals to be added so that we can preserve, we can cure, we can make the leather soft, and we can also basically involve the mechanical processes. For example, we have to have a uniform thickness of the leather which we want. So for that, some mechanical processes may also be used. Similarly, we can use a number of chemicals. For example, we can use lime here, we can use sulfides here, we can use number of salts here, as well as we can use acids here, and number of enzymes are also used during the tanning process, which we will be discussing just now. So here the hides which are there, so they are converted into the non-deteriorated product by preserving it, by adding a certain chemicals which may be organic or inorganic in nature. So these materials may become chemically bound to the protein structure of these hides, and then they can preserve it from the further degradation. So we can have two types of tanning operations, where we can have the chrome tanning as well as we can have the vegetable tanning. So in the chrome tanning, as the name suggests, we have to use chromium salts so that the tanning process is accomplished. Similarly, for the vegetable tanning, we use the extracts which are received from the bark of the trees, for example chestnuts, or we can also use certain plants so that we can tan the leather by using vegetable tanning. So the manufacturing of the leather, it involves a number of operations for where we convert this raw animal hides into different types of leather. For example, we can have the raw leathers, we can have the finished leathers, we can have the colored leathers, we can have a very highly soft leather which is of very, very high qualities. So for different type of leathers, we have to have a different types of operations which are involved so that we can convert the raw hides into the leather. So basically we have three stages, where we first of all prepare the hides for the tanning process so that the hides may become receptive to the tanning. The second process is the tanning process itself, where we tan the leather, where we try to convert the leather into a stable product. Similarly, we have to go for finishing process. After the tanning process, we convert the leather into a finished product. So the preparation of hides may involve, for example, when we are having the hides which are coming from the slaughterhouses, so we have to see that the hides, so they are properly cleaned, they are hydrated, and they are ready to undergo the tanning process. So the preparation of hides means that is we try to prepare the hides, we try to make the hides amenable to the process of the tanning, so that it can receive the tanning chemicals into it, and then basically it can be converted to a degradation resistant product. So we can have different steps here for the preparation of hides, where basically we use curing or preservations, then we go for the soaking process, we go for liming and deliming process, we go for bedding, we go for pickling process. So preparation of hides covers the first step is the curing or preservation. So the hides are brought from the slaughterhouses, so we receive the hides in the tanneries from the slaughterhouses so that we can convert it into the leather. So here these hides may be first of all preserved by adding certain salts so that there is no decomposition or bacterial growth taking place. So that's why for preventing it from the bacterial growth or basically from the further decomposition or degradation before it is converted to the leather, so it has to be cured or preserved. So this means that whatever the salts we have used here, which for the preservatives, so that also needs to be removed during the preservation and curing processes. We have to wash the hides so that we can remove the dirt as well as the salt preservatives. Similarly, we also soak it further into the fresh water which contains NaCl, or it may also contain the preservative chemicals like antimucin, and we have to soak it for at least for 1 to 5 days so that it may become receptive for the further processes. After curing process, we go for soaking, where the cured hides which have been soaked in the salt water or in the preservative water, so they are now soaked in the water so that whatever the salt is there, so salt that we have used, so it may have dried the leather. So to rehydrate the hides, we generally go for the soaking process where it is soaked in the water for a long time so that it becomes receptive to the subsequent processes. So for the preparation of hides, we have to treat it by using a paste of lime as well as sodium sulfite. So here we use a combination of lime and sodium sulfite in the ratio of 8:1, and this is basically done in the wooden vats, and this process is called liming, where it serves a number of purposes. For example, we can have first of all the hair removal, where the limes, it helps in the loosening of the hair follicles, and this facilitates the removal of the hair from the hides. So this may be done so that the hairs are first of all removed from the hides. Then we go for fleshing process. So here the lime also aids in the removal of the flesh, and it also basically helps in the removal of the non-collagen proteins which are there in the hides, so that the hide may become free from these materials, and later on basically we can go for the tanning process. Similarly, it also opens up the fibers, where the collagen fibers, they can become more permeable to the tanning agents which we are using during the tanning process. So that's how the preparation of the hides is done, so that the lime may be used for making the hides more receptive to the tanning process, as well as it removes a number of unwanted things which are there on the hides, so that it may be further used for the tanning process. So we can have the preparation of the hides, the liming may be done and it may lose the hairs. So these hairs may be removed mechanically also. The hairs which are removed mechanically, so they can be washed, they can be dried, and they can also be sold as a byproduct. For example, it can be used for a number of other materials. For example, it can be used for carpet pads, and we can use these hairs for other purposes also. So this is one of the things by which we can use these hairs. However, the common method is that we generally go for the liming process, and we completely dissolve these hairs, and these hairs may find their way in the wastewater stream. So here, after the hairs are removed, so then basically these hides are really prepared for the actual tanning process. So then we go for the deliming process, where the deliming process means that is we remove the excess lime which has been added in the hides. So during the liming process, we have added lime as well as the sodium sulfite. So we generally wash it so that we try to remove the extra lime which is there, and which has also raised the pH of that hides. So basically we also try to wash it so that we can adjust the pH, and then it may become more suitable for the next stage of processing, because the next stage of processing may require a low pH values. So that's why it is very, very important that we wash the hides completely after the liming process, so that they may be delimed as well as the pH may be reduced. Then the process comes which is known as the bating process, which is used so that we can further soften the hides, or we can also condition the hides. The collagen fibers are also conditioned so that it becomes more soft and more receptive to the next processes. So here we use a number of enzymes. For example, we may use here proteolytic enzyme solutions, which may be dissolving the proteins, which may be converting these proteins into the simpler compounds, and then basically it can be discharged into the wastewater. So here the hides are placed into a large rotating drums, which you can see on the right. So these type of drums are used. Here we place the hides and we place the enzyme solutions, and they are rotated and for a long time, so that these proteolytic enzyme may get enough time so that the bating process may be completed. So bating not only reduces the pH, but it also helps in reduction of the swelling of the hides which have been done during the liming process. Similarly, it also helps in the protein degradation of the proteins which are attached to the hides. So after the bating process, we go for a process which is known as the pickling. Now we place the hides in the rotating drums and we treat it by using the salt acid solutions. So here we try to further lower the pH so that the hides may become receptive to the tanning agents, which basically acts very well in the acidic environment. So now the hides become ready for undergoing the tanning process. So these are some of the preparation processes which are used so that the tanning process may start. So the main advantage of the tanning process is that it treats the hides so that it can become more durable. Similarly, it will treat the hide so that it becomes resistant to the decay. It will be resistant to the putrefaction process, otherwise it will degrade further and we will not be able to utilize it for our further use if it is not properly tanned. Similarly, it is also used for a number of other applications. For example, when we are going for the coloring process and we are going for the dyeing process, so in that case also the tanning process is very essential. So here we can have two types of tanning. For example, we can have the vegetable tanning and the chrome tanning. So we'll discuss the vegetable tanning and chrome tanning one by one. So let us start with the chrome tanning process, and most of the leather which are produced, which are of very good quality, so they are mostly chrome tanned. That is, we use here the chromium solutions, the chromium 3 solutions, so that we can tan the leather. And these type of leather which are produced from the chrome tanning, so they may be used for the upper parts of the boots and shoes, they may be used for clothing, they may be used for apparels, they are used for preparing a very good quality of light leathers. So for example, when we go for the vegetable tanning, generally the leather that is produced is of a thick quality, whereas in this case the very light and soft leather is produced by the chrome tanning process. And chrome tanning process also requires a very less processing time in comparison to the traditional vegetable tanning, where we may require longer contact hours so that the tanning process may be completed. And in the tanning process, we use the same vat as we have used for the pickling in the previous step, and we add a solution of chromium sulfate to it and we mix it for 24 hours. So what happens that this chromium sulfate may be having a characteristic color, so this characteristic color goes on to the chrome tanned hides. So this may convert the hides into blue color hide. That's why a characteristic blue color is caused after the chrome tanning process is completed. Now some color has been added onto these hides, so we used a bleaching agent so that we can remove this color, and we can use a dilute solution of sodium thiosulfate or sodium carbonate in the same bath so that this leather which is having a certain color after the chrome tanning, so this can be removed from the hides. After this, we may throw out the half of the spent liquor which is there in the chrome tanning process, and then we can reuse the other half by using fresh volume of the water. And this liquor which is thrown out from the chrome tanning process, it may contain a lot of chromium salts into it, so that may be a matter of concern and it should be properly treated before we put it for the safe disposal. So after this process, the excess moisture which is there, so it may be removed from the hides by using an operation which is called the wringing operation. So wringing operation is the similar operation as we try to wring our clothes after bathing. So we try to apply a force in the opposite direction so that whatever the excess water which is there or excess moisture which is there in the hides, so this can be removed from the hides. So it also results in the soft leather. For example, when we are going for the applications like upholstery, clothing and other accessories, so we generally try to prepare a soft leather so that these type of items can be made with good quality. So after the chrome tanning process, since the cattle hides they are too thick, so what we do here that we try to split it. That is, we try to remove the upper portion and the lower portion here so that we can get a leather which is of uniform thickness, and it is having a lower thickness also, which results from the splitting of the hides. So for example, it will produce two surfaces. One surface will be a grain side which is on the top, whereas the lower portion which is there, it is basically containing no grains, so that is basically a thin portion also. So that is known as a split, or it is also called the blue drop. So this is splitted into two parts. So here the one surface which has the grain side retains the natural grain, whereas the other surface which is the lower portion, so it basically has no grains and it is smoother in nature. And because of the no graining, they may be used for making of the suede garments or the suede shoes, where basically suede may be used for a more permeable and softer leather which we require for some type of shoes or we may require for some type of clothings. So both the grain side as well as the split, so they may be further processed so they can have the uniform thickness. So for this we go for a process which is called shaving, where we try to remove the small pieces of the leather which are there. So when we try to make the thickness uniform, so it may result into a very small pieces of leather which are very similar to the coarse sawdust. This may be removed from the leather and these are called shavings and they may result in the solid waste generation. So after this process, the tanned hides which are there, so they are retanned and then basically they are colored and then they are fat liquid. For example, retanning is a very short span of second tanning process where basically we use some other salts rather than the chromium salt. So that is known as the retanning process. So this may further increase the durability of the leather. So we go for the retanning process. After retanning, we go for the coloring process. That is, we try to add certain pigment, we try to add certain dyes to the hide so that basically whatever the leather is produced, we try to add certain pigments, we try to add certain dyes to the leather so that we can get the desired colors in the leather. And then after that the hides are again taken out and they are wrung so that the excess moisture which is present, so that may be removed from the produced leather. After this we take it to a process which is called fat liquoring, where we add a number of mixture of the oils. For example, we can use mineral oils, we can use the crude oils, so that the desired softness in the leather may be attained. And so these hides are now added into the oil into a rotating drum, where these oils may be added or the mixture of the oils or grease basically may also be added so that the leather may be fat liquored. So after this the leather is dried and then it is physically conditioned. So for the physically conditioning of the leather, we go for the processes which are known as the staking and buffing, where staking means that is we try to massage the leather further so that it becomes more pliable, more resistant to the cracks, etc., and becomes more softer. And similarly the buffing operation may also be done where light sanding operation may be done so that whatever the imperfections are there on the underside, on the grain side also, so that can be smoothened out and these surface imperfections can be removed from the leather and leather becomes more soft and more durable. So the finishing processes may also be used here. For example, we can provide a further gloss to the leather that is produced. So this may enhance the waterproof qualities of the leather. So here we try to have the liquid finish materials which we try to roll it on it or we try to spray it. For example, we can apply 3 to 4 coats of those finishing liquids which is again followed by the drying cycles. After that we may also go for making some patterns. We can have the embossing done on the leather which is now totally prepared so that we can have the hallmarks, the industrial marks on that, or basically we can have other information embossed on the surface of the leather. So this basically can be done. So this comes under the finishing process. And finally the area of each of these leather is measured electronically and then it may be stamped on the underside, so that which means that now the leather is finished and then it may be packed and it can be stored for the further shipment. Vegetable tanning may also be done. For example, here we use the tannins which are received from the plant sources. For example, we can use certain type of tree barks, we can use certain type of leaves, we can use certain type of fruits so that we can tan the hides. So when we are going for the vegetable tanning, so in that case we may produce a leather which is more of thicker quality, which is more firm as well as durable, and as well as it produces the products. For example, when we want to produce the leather belts, saddles, the work gloves, the shoes, the soles of the shoes, the craft works, etc. So we generally go for the vegetable tanning process. So this vegetable tanning process may result in a leather which is not of very high quality, but it can be used for our daily use items, or basically we can use it for a more rough work that can be done, and where basically this type of tanning may be used. So the vegetable tanning has also the similar basic steps as we have seen in the previous in the chrome tanning. So however the sequence may be somewhat different, and there may be some few finishing operations which are associated only with the vegetable tanning process only. And here the fleshing process is done after the hair removal, and the baking process is also similar to that of the chrome tanning process, but the pickling may not be done in this vegetable tanning. So here the coloring is done by using a very weak tanning solutions, and that's why we find that the vegetable tan leather is not highly colored, and we generally find that the vegetable tan leather, they are more or less brownish in color, and they do not have other colors on it, or the colors are there but these colors may be quite light in comparison to the colors that we see in the chrome tanning leather. So here after coloring, the hides may be produced, may be added into the vats which may contain the bark extract, which basically we take it from the strong tanning solution, and then later on we take it to a weaker tanning solutions, and then it can be rinsed and then it can be dried. Here the splitting process is not required because the leather is basically not split into two parts. We try to convert the leather into a thick leather only, and here however the layering process may be done so that we can get a uniform piece of thickness of the leather, and that's why in this case there is no split that is produced during the vegetable tanning. So after this, the hides are generally oiled so that it can be fat liquid as we do in the chrome tanning, and after the oiling we can dry and then we can mechanically condition it, and virtually we require no finishing process in the vegetable tanning processes, and some spray finishes may be applied, and the only finishing process that is employed is to press it so that we can get very smooth grained surfaces, and then later on it can be measured and it can be packaged prior to the shipment. So in the finishing processes we may go for the stuffing, fat liquoring, as well as the dyeing process, that is the coloring of the leather that is produced after the tanning process, and here we may also go for adding oil and grease so that the leather that is produced basically becomes more soft, it becomes more pliable, and it becomes more resistant to the tearing of the leather. And here we can also go for using synthetic dye stuffs for providing different type of colors to the leather. So if we talk about the flow diagram of the vegetable as well as the chrome tanning process, so we can see here that the raw hides are taken first of all to the soaking process where we add sodium chloride to it, certain salts are added so that whatever the proteins are there, whatever the flesh is there, whatever the dirt is there, so that can be removed from the system. And here we can see that it may lead to the intermittent and strong waste from the soaking process. And after the soaking process, we can take it to the fleshing, where basically we try to remove the fleshing by washing it further, right, by soaking it further. And this fleshing basically may produce a waste which is continuous, and it is a weak type of waste that is produced. After the fleshing, we can take it to a liming process where we add lime as well as we may add sodium sulfite to it so that the hairs, the proteins, and the resistance, or basically the opening of the collagen fibers, so this may happens, and then basically it may result into again a strong and the intermittent waste. So from the liming process we can take it to the dehairing process where we can dehair the hides which are there, and these dehairing may be done where we can loosely remove the hair from there, which results in a byproduct, or we can also completely dissolve the hairs. So this may result into a continuous and the weak waste. After the dehairing process, we can take it to the process of the baiting where basically we can go for addition of certain enzymes, like here we can use chymotrypsin or trypsin as well as ammonium sulfate can be used, and the baiting process may also result into the intermittent strong waste. And then we wash the hides so that it may result into the continuous and the weak waste. So after the baiting process, if we talk of the chrome tanning process, so we can take the hides to the pickling process where we add certain salts, we add certain acid to it so that the hides may become receptive to the chrome tanning process. And in the tanning process, we add a certain chromium salts, that is chromium sulfate, and we also add certain salts to it. After the tanning is done, we may go for the splitting process. Then after that, we may go for the washing process, and washing process may result in a continuous and the weak waste. So after the washing process, we can go for coloring and fat liquoring, and then we go for the finishing. And this coloring and fat liquoring may result in an intermittent strong waste here also. Similarly, when we talk about the vegetable tanning process, so in that case, we may use a certain extract which are generated from the bark or from the nuts or from the vegetables. So this tanning process is done, and this tanning process may lead to the intermittent strong waste. And similarly, after this, we may bleach the hides and by using a solution of sodium sulfate and sulfuric acid. And after which we may go for oiling and loading, where we add certain oil, salts and sugar also, and we go for the finishing process. So that's how the vegetable tanning and the chrome tanning process may differ in their processes. So if we talk about this flow diagram of the vegetable tanning process, so here we can see that we are taking the raw hides to the soaking pits. So this may result into the continuous flow of the wastewater also. So for example, we can have the washing which is being done. So this may result in a continuous wastewater, whereas the spent liquor which is being generated from the liming vats, so it may result in the intermittent flow of wastewater. Defleshing and dehairing may lead to the continuous generation of the wastewater. The deliming and baiting may result in the continuous flow of wastewater when we are going for the washing it, and whereas the solution that we are using for the deliming and the baiting process, so this spent liquor may result in an intermittent flow of the wastewater. So tanning process here also may lead to a continuous generation of the wastewater. After the tanning process, when we go for the washing process, so it may lead to the continuous generation of the wastewater, whereas the tanning extract that we are using, the spent liquor of the tanning process may result in an intermittent flow of wastewater. Similarly, the washing and finishing process may lead to the generation of the continuous flow of the wastewater, as well as it may lead to the intermittent flow of the wastewater, and then we get the finished leather. So we stop here, and we will be discussing about the characteristics of the wastewater that is generated from the various processes which are involved in the tanning process in the next lecture. So these are the references that we have used for the preparation of this lecture. Thank you.